Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information and listen to our previous shows at our website. And if I'm out of the way here, there it is, www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week, we focus on positive news and information that people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Missy Bell. Missy Bell is a film director, there she waved, you're ahead of me, Missy, here in Asheville, who's currently crowdfunding for day 2 and 3 of a production of her next short film. And the film is about the need for connection and was written by Laura Collier, is it?
Cuellar.
Cuellar, I'm sorry. Okay. And before we talk about the film, and it's kind of an exciting film to talk about, Missy, I always ask, first time I meet somebody on air, even though this is the second time you and I have met, but your background, you're a film director. How long have you been a film director?
I've been directing films for about 5 years.
Okay. And so when you were a little kid growing up, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And did you always know you wanted to be a film director?
No, I started out wanting to be a teacher, and I was one. I taught ninth grade English, and then I taught theater for several years in the public school system in Maryland. And then I directed theater for many, many years. I've been a theater director since I was 19. I'm 43 now, so a lot of time. And then about 5 years ago, I directed my first film, and I wasn't sure, how will my theatrical skill set translate? I wasn't sure if it would. And it really did. And I really fell in love with filmmaking. I still love stage work. It feels like home, but film is my current passion for sure.
So when you were growing up, so you were an actor also growing up?
Yes.
And so the question I always ask, and I'm asking it for a reason, is what was your very first show you were ever in?
The very first show, the first show I really count, I was acting my whole life, like since age 3. My dad is a pastor. And so I think I played Mary, the mother of Jesus, like 25 times. But the first like real show that I was in, I was 15. It was in high school, and it was A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
And what was your role in that?
I played Vibrata, a courtesan.
Well, I ask that for a reason, because I had this great idea for a fundraiser, Missy, and it would be everybody would create their own first role, so you would create that role as a 3-year-old. You can imagine, because is there a record of that anywhere, or is that on tape anywhere?
Oh man, I don't think my dad got a video camera until I was older.
Okay,
Yeah, that was in the 80s.
Wouldn't that be cool? Or I'm going to give you a chance to make a comeback before we talk about your film work, but every year, I'm going to do it this year, I participate in something called the Road to Bethlehem. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been in it?
I have not. No.
Okay. Well, I was in it last couple of years, and I was disappointed. Last year, I wanted to be baby Jesus, but they didn't choose me. So I'm going to try that for that again, or also a jackass. Might be typecasting if I'm the jackass.
To get yours.
Exactly. Have you ever seen it though?
I have not. No.
Okay, come to it, or I'll send you information. Check my blog. But they have like 50 people in it, and you don't have to have any acting background, but it's just a lot of fun. And so that's something I'm going to be doing. And I'm thinking out loud, seriously, we should come back to you sometime. I don't think they've ever done a film of that, and it would be a great thing for the church to have, or ABCCM, great group to do it. So you acted then in high school. Did you continue acting after that?
I did. Yeah. I don't even think I can count the number of plays that I've been in. Just ever since then, never stopped, show after show. So
okay, and I think maybe I've had the pleasure of seeing you in Asheville. Have you done stuff in Asheville?
I have. I worked really a lot with Anam Cara Theater Company.
Okay, sure.
And I've been in several plays with Fringe and at the Magnetic. I think my most recent stage performances were in the Magnetic's One Act Festival 2 years ago.
Okay, and I've seen those, so that's probably where I saw you. But now, fast forward that. So then you've been the stage stuff, but you got into film about 5 years ago. What got you into film?
So I was directing a production of Romeo and Juliet with Anam Cara,
Right.
and we were using the Actors Center of Asheville as a rehearsal space. And Kevin Patrick Murphy,
Sure.
who runs that space, he saw me working and he came up to me and said, "Hey, have you ever done any film acting?" And I said, "No, I don't like film. I'm stage work only. Film's so restricted." um, but he really encouraged me. He was like, "Come in for an interview. I think you'd really like it." And so I did, and I started acting in film um, because of Kevin. And then as I was working, I realized I had so many friends who wanted to make movies and they had these great ideas, but there weren't enough people who were had the access to make movies. And so I took a class with Brad Hoover at the Asheville School of Film. I took his introduction to film class and I told him I wanted to be a cinematographer, I wanted to run the camera. And by the end of the class, he did a thing where you would write a script and then you had to pitch it to the class. And one person, their pitch would get chosen and then they would get to direct the class film. And so I made my first film that way with Brad. And he was so encouraging as a mentor to me and told me, you need to do this. You're really talented at filmmaking. You need to be a director. Forget cinematography, you need to direct film. And he was encouraging to me as an actor as well, but very encouraging in directing. And so I had an agent, an acting agent at the time, who I stayed with for 2 more years, and I directed a few short films. And I finally, a couple of years ago, told my acting agent, "Hey, I'm going to pursue directing full time. I'm not going to be pursuing acting anymore." And with her blessing, I quit pursuing acting and really moved into focusing on direction.
And the very first film you did then 2 years ago, or I don't know how many years ago, is there a copy of that somewhere?
There is. You can see it on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's Missy Bell. It says film director as the qualifier. And the first film I ever made is called Sink, and it features Molly Graves, who's a
Okay,
really
sure.
popular actor in the area. She's so fabulous. And my child, whose name at the time, stage name, was Jonah Crane, Bert Benninghoffen, who's now a much older teenager, and Thomas L. Townsend, all were acting in that production.
No, it's cool. A lot of directors don't tell me the truth, or I'll say if you're honest here. But especially with stage directors and probably film directors too, the one advantage is you don't have to memorize the lines, so the truth comes out. I guess you know all the lines by the time the film is over. But that's really cool. So you started doing film. Now these are primarily short films, is that correct?
Yeah, so my next goal as a filmmaker is to make a feature, and I actually have several features upcoming on my slate for the next couple of years. But so far I've only made shorts. So that's
But that's quite a challenge just to get them off the ground and you have some stuff doing. So if you would repeat that page we can find your stuff at.
yeah, sure. It is Missy Bell Director on YouTube.
Okay, so I'll have to look for it. So I guess I kind of fast forward. So you've been doing that for a bunch of years, and now you're involved in this current production.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about the current production.
Sure. So it's called Outbound, and it was written by Laura Cuellar. It is about a teenager who is living in a completely isolated world, and every day they listen to a journal that they've made to remind them why they want to be in isolation, why it's better now. And one day, day 700, we come upon them and they listen to their journal and they come to the realization that they're actually very lonely, and they decide to reach out for help. And I don't want to spoil it, but it does have a really encouraging ending. And you find that it's really someone who is lost, not in a dystopian world, but in their own depression and sadness. And so they're reaching out into the world is how they find connection, and that's able to pull them out of that darkness.
Now, just listening to you, I'm kind of interested in it because it seems like also like a perfect Twilight Zone episode. So, I could just see this, in the future, and people, 2 or 3 people wandering around. So it really sounds exciting. But what's interesting also about it is it came together, I guess, or thinking about it, when the COVID struck and we were in the pandemic, and it almost seems like a perfect story as a result of that. Is that when you started putting it together?
We started putting it together after that. Laura came to me with her idea this past spring, but it is about the effects of COVID and how we as a society got used to isolation. And so many people are talking now about how it's actually harder for them to go out. It's harder for them to remember about how to connect with people. Even, years later, there's still a push toward staying alone, staying inside, not having people over, not going to work at a coffee shop, staying in your house. And especially for teenagers who went through that, they missed this huge chunk of their social development. And I have 2 teenagers in my house, and lots of kids have expressed similar things like, well, it's fine. I can just like connect through my computer. I don't need like real life friends. But there is like a palpable loneliness that a lot of those kids are feeling because they missed out on learning how to make those connections. And so this is really focused on them, but it really relates to everyone who's trying to get back into community after having to be isolated and going through that trauma.
What's interesting, Missy, is the fact that, at least in the industry, there's this whole split between people who still want to stay at home versus people who want to go to work, and it's really creating problems for, certain industries that nobody wants to work. And nor did I love working full time, 9 to 5, having to travel an hour to get to work, an hour home. Whereas at least work, and even with these podcasts, I love doing them. So I don't have to drag you into the station, I don't have to be there. And it's a pleasure to kind of be able to do that. But times have changed. So go back to the process. So somebody, in terms of if they want you to direct a film or be involved with you in a production, the writer comes to you with an idea. Is that what happens?
Sometimes. So usually as a director, either you're writing your own stuff in film, or a writer comes to you or a producer comes to you. And so you're really marketing yourself as, I can tell your story really well. And so sometimes a writer will say, will you tell my story? And sometimes a producer will say, I already have this story. We're looking for funding. Will you sign on as the director of this project? So there are kind of like 3 different inroads. And really starting out as a director, a lot of people become writer directors because that's how you get your first jobs, because nobody is going to trust you with their narrative if they haven't seen your narrative.
And then on top of that, what amazes me is some people not only are the writer director, but they also act in their own plays, and then, like I said, produce it, do the whole thing. But I'm just blown away. Some people do that, and especially some pretty big names of people who do that, in their spare time, they do all this stuff. So you have the idea for the film. Talk about then the process, and that ties into what we'll be talking about now. Is the reality is it does cost some money to put on a film. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So
film is expensive.
and explain the costs involved in this.
Sure. So there are a lot of filmmakers who will say, like, I made this film for 0 budget, and that's never really true. You need equipment to make it look beautiful. You need to feed everybody. Film is an industry where you're working a 10 to 12-hour day, and part of that is making sure everybody gets at least 2 meals during that day. You're paying people for their time and their skill set. There so much lighting, makeup, wardrobe. And so even when you see a film that says we didn't spend any money, the reality is you probably have a lot of friends who did spend a lot of money and time acquiring their makeup, their lighting, an expensive camera. And so making something look really beautiful and cinematic is an expensive endeavor. And then you also want to pay people for their time.
Let's talk a little bit about that because I give you credit in terms of wanting to do that. I mean, people don't just come to you all the time for exposure. They can get exposure. They can be seen. Um, and no other profession seems tries to do that. People do. You can be you become a doctor, so you can become well known. Become a lawyer. But actors, I mean, I really give you credit. So your belief is that if they're in a production, you want them to be paid as well.
I think it's really important. I think sometimes it's okay to make a film with your friends on the weekend if you happen to have access to equipment and really talented friends. But I also think that being paid for your time is an important thing, and more talented people are going to be willing to come out for that and spend their time doing it, even if you can just pay them a little something, to let them know, like, hey, I see you as valuable and your work is valuable. I see that you put years of training into your craft. And I think that is important.
Well, it's the same thing as musicians, that musicians are asked to perform for free. And then, like you said, they forget the 5,000, 10,000 hours to become a musician, an actor to study. And then, yeah, it's time, it's money, but to your credit, you pay them. So let's talk about the process then in terms of raising money, not only for this film, but other productions as well. So one of the things I believe you're currently underway and right in the middle of it, you started a campaign to ask people to contribute to it.
Yes. So for this film, we are crowdfunding. It's one of the riskier ways to get money. Um, so in order to crowdfund, you are dependent upon the community to see your project as valuable and send money to that project. And so we filmed our first day of production. We actually had several really amazing backers who funded that without crowdfunding, sent us a check, said, I believe in this project. I'm excited to fund it. And we started out with around $2,000 for that first day. We shot that, and then we created a pitch video with that footage, and then footage of myself and Laura, the writer, and Michael Bell, the producer, explaining why the film is important. We had a behind the scenes photographer taking many, many hundreds of pictures. So we're posting those. We started an Instagram and a Facebook to get following happening. And then we put together the rest of the Seed and Spark campaign, which when you go to our Seed and Spark page, it has a pitch video. And then it also has all of the cast and crews, like IMDb. It has a budget breakdown with a pie chart saying exactly where everybody's money will go. And it's really specific in how you can help to fund the project.
And if I can ask you just two things here. So you said you have this page. Could you give the address for that, if you would, please?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find it is to go to bit.ly/OTBND. So it's the title without any vowels. And I'll send that over to you for sure.
Okay,
But
send it, and I'll also put it in the description of the video. So that's
perfect.
the easiest way to find it. But let me also ask you, so if they go there, will they see that YouTube video we were talking about?
They will. Yeah, that's right at the top of the page.
And fingers crossed, but I think it'd be helpful if we could try to punch up that YouTube video. So people want to get a sense of what this is all about. They go to the website, the page,
Okay.
and if we're lucky, we want to see if we can punch up right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. I'm
Okay.
going to share my screen with you.
Okay. And by the way, if you're listening to this, Missy is showing a video about the film seen at the website. And again, we'll put it in the description as well. But in a second, if we're lucky, I think we're getting close, you're going to see this video talks a little bit about the film. I think we're there, Missy. Good job.
I think we're ready. Are you ready?
Okay, yep, you got
Okay,
it.
great.
I've always felt alone, so this world is familiar. Making connections with people was difficult. I like this world now because I'm alone for real.
Outbound is a story about an adolescent who lives alone in a desolate world, and they are glad that they're there, or so they think. The wanderer is actually really lonely, and they desperately want connection and community, but they're just afraid to ask for it.
So originally I came up with the idea for Outbound because of how I felt growing up and, feeling awkward and like I didn't fit in. And I was the weird kid, I still really struggled with finding people who accepted me and wanted me just to be me, and I fit in just perfectly with them.
When Laura brought this idea to me as a director and to Mouse House Productions, I knew we had to make it.
As a producer, I'm putting together a team to tell this fantastic and beautiful story so that it can touch hearts and lives and hopefully save some. With $3,000 already raised and day one of filming already complete, I'm excited not only with the promise of this team, but with our actual results.
Your pledge will not only help get this film made, but you get to become part of the production team. You'll get inside information on everything that's happening behind the scenes. You'll get to see trailers first, and you'll get to see some footage first.
Join our team today by clicking the pledge button on this page and following our campaign.
And as we get out of this screen, make a pledge today. Again, if you're watching it, it's seedandspark.com/fund/outbound. And we'll put that in the description as well. But Missy, if you can come on back, get out of that, great. And so that's a little 2-minute thing about the film itself. Again, if you would repeat the website if people want to contribute to the process.
Yeah, it's seedandspark/fund/outbound.
Okay. And what was that other one you mentioned? There was another...
Yeah, it takes you to the same place. It's just a little simpler. So it's bit.ly/OTBND.
Okay. And what we'll do, folks, if you're listening to this or watching it, we'll also put in the description. Missy, if you send me that over, so make it easy for people. And let's talk a little bit then about the production. So how many actors are in this production?
Total, let me think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7.
Okay. And mention some of them if you have them off the top of your head.
Sure. Elias Hamilton is the lead actor. They play the Wanderer. Anna Alicia Carroll plays the Welcomer. Those are our 2 principal cast. The mom character is played by Laura Cuellar, who's also the writer. Todd Levin is playing the dad.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, Stellan Atwood is playing the young version of the Wanderer. And then we have Eleanor Levin, Madeline Pomeroy, and Raya Atwood, who are playing 3 pretty girls who are mean.
Okay. Now, what's interesting about this, so you filmed one day of the production, and then if we raise the funds, we'll do the second and third day. And so what, each step of the way, you finish a little bit more as you finish it?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully we get the funds coming in soon so we can finish production. Then what happens after you finish the production sometime in November? What happens?
Then we'll go into post-production. And during post, we'll edit the film together. We'll do coloring on the film, and we'll have a composer come in and write a score for the film. And after it's completely finished with all those things, and that will include sound editing and Foley as well. And then after all of those post-production things are finished, then we'll send the film out onto the festival circuit. So hopefully it can get a lot of laurels and exposure and get people interested in watching it and interested in all the cast and crew and getting them more work. So.
And when do you see that happening?
When?
Yeah.
It will probably hit the festival circuit sometime at the end of December.
Okay, this December.
Yes.
Oh, very exciting. So then after it's the festival circuit, what happens?
So after it will be on the circuit for about a year, hopefully collecting like awards and getting seen by as many people as possible. And then we'll release the film. Probably we'll have a local screening of like multiple short films and show that one as like an Asheville premiere event. And then it will be released online somewhere to the wider world. That's kind of the market for short films.
Okay, and let me know when that happens also, because I'm thinking we could also, in addition to the party you have or whatever, we could all conceivably do it as a podcast to release the film on the podcast. So keep me in mind
that would be super cool.
I don't think I've ever done that yet, but that would be kind of fun. And then you mentioned the most important date. So if we get it out 2004, it'll be just in time for the Oscars, the short film, collection. Now I have to ask you too, knowing you probably used to always watch the short films.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they're at the Grail or elsewhere, you watch every short film that's ever been produced?
I mean, no. But I have attended the Grails event where they show the Oscar winning or Oscar nominated short films. It's really cool. I love the Grail Movie House.
Me too. Yeah, big fan. But what's interesting about like the short films, except when I see them at the Grail, there aren't too many other places. Can you see? Are they on Netflix? I guess if you look for them, or
So usually short films, you can find them on YouTube. You can find some of them on Tubi, and Amazon Prime. Those are all like really good, decent short film markets right now. And also, you can find them on Vimeo. That's a big short film place.
okay. But I guess a special kind of thing you have to look for. But again, when I saw them at the Grail, I got really interested in some of the short films. You know, they're kind of cool. Now, do you have an interest in terms of your short films in the future moving forward, drama or documentaries? Do you have a preference?
Definitely narrative. I really like telling a fictional story. I appreciate watching documentaries, but my favorite stories to tell are fiction.
Okay, but this story looks kind of cool. You know, it's just the one day, as I see it. So where do we go from here? So we get this produced. Down the road, if I can kind of ask you to, I guess how to predict it, what do you see yourself doing in the future?
My hope is to be directing feature films. Short films are kind of like an inroad, and all of my mentors are saying, you need to be done with short films, you need to direct a feature. And so my goal for this year was to get some feature films kind of on my slate. And I have many feature projects sort of boiling on the back burner and waiting for next steps from producers, next steps from funding. And so it's really a waiting game with such a big project, and especially with the strikes going on right now. And I support that. With SAG being on strike, a couple projects are really on hold, waiting for the ability to move forward. So
That'll be down the road. We'll look forward to seeing your first feature film.
yes.
But it could be wrong. It won't be the 3.5 hour film that's out now. What's the one?
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Have you seen that yet?
I have not seen it yet, but I plan to soon. I know it's at the Fine Arts Theater right now. So
I think it was also at the Grail, and it may still be there, but I'm going to wait until it gets on Apple TV. You know, that's 3.5 hours is a little bit long for me for
a long time.
Yeah, but I think a 10-minute film from Missy Bell is definitely worth seeing. So to recap, Missy, kind of looking forward to this. We're inviting people, and I'll volunteer to sign up as well. The thing we most could use help in is get days 2 and 3 produced of this film. And the easiest way is I'll ask you one more time to give the address, and then, like I said, send it to me and we'll put it in the description. But the address is what again, please?
Sure. It's bit.ly/OTBND.
Okay, and again, if you want to support independent filmmaking, if you want to support any of the people Missy mentioned, this is the best way to go. And so I'd like to thank you, Missy, for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World podcast. I also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and I really look forward to seeing this. And now I know the details behind it, and we'll speak to you soon, and hopefully we'll even get to meet in person one time.
Okay, thank you so much, Blaine.
Okay, my pleasure. And just stay with me. I'm going to sign off here if I can. Smooth on the way here and signing off.